Hello, yeah, Nina. Welcome to your next geography lesson. The Do Now task is on the board. You have 9 questions. I'd like you to try and answer as many of them as possible. You've got up to 10 minutes to do that. Get cracking now, and the answers will be coming in a second. Pause the video now. Okay, here's some answers for you. If you could just read through those and correct any that you may have got wrong or missed out. The 2 blue ones are worth focusing on. Those are 2 questions based on work from year 8, specifically in the China topic. Now, those 2 are very important to try and remember because both are very, very vital for this lesson. This lesson builds on something that you will perhaps recognize from year 8 China, but links it to the development topic that we are currently studying. So spend 5 minutes at most checking through your answers, correct any that are wrong. If you're not sure on why one is wrong or why the answer is as it is, this is your chance to maybe go back and have a look at your notes from last lesson, see if you can work out why. Or by all means, obviously, ping your teacher an email and we're more than happy to help. Pause the video now. Okay, so this lesson is all about population pyramids. This is really a skills-based lesson. You're going to be looking at a population pyramid, which is in essence a bar graph, and interpreting it. We're going to hopefully work through interpreting it. Like I said, you may remember some of this from year 8, but if not, don't worry. We're going to go back to basics and work our way through it. So start by writing the title and the date. Please underline them, get your equipment ready, read through the objectives, and we shall get on with it. Pause the video now. Okay, so the first thing to be aware of is a population pyramid shows the population structure of a country. With that in mind, what does population structure mean? Well, the definition is on the board. It's what a population is like. For example, how many men and women there are, or how old people are. Could you please copy that down? Leave a line under your title, jot that down, pause the video now. Okay, so population pyramids help us to predict changes in the number of people who can work for a country. How much demand for housing and services there might be, such as hospital and schools, and they help us to compare different countries as well. This is why population pyramids are created. This is why you see them being used by governments. You see them being created by some of the biggest population studying organizations of the world. Population pyramids are something that are used out there in the real world in order to make decisions about a country. And here we go, one that might be familiar to you. This is the population pyramid you studied last year for China. So let's just recap what it actually is made up of. To begin with, we've got a series of blue and pink bars. Blue on the male side, showing how many male people there are. The longer the bar, the more people there are in each bar. And on the right, we have females. At the middle, we have the age groups. So if we're looking at the bottom bar, we want to look at how many men there are, how many males there are, aged 0 to 4. We use the axis along the bottom, just like a normal graph, and we can see that there are, well, roughly halfway between 39 and 52, so let's say 45 million 0 to 4 males in China. And we can do the same working up on both sides, and if we just look generally, we can see kind of patterns in age groups. So for example, here you can see that some of the largest age groups are around the 40s and 50s. Okay, so if we have a look at this graph again, and we start to go through some of what it actually tells us about population structure. We're going to start interpreting it. So you can see the first bullet point there. The birth rate has reduced over a long period of time. You should remember what birth rate is, hopefully from last lesson, but if you don't, it's the number of babies born per 1,000 people. So we look at the bottom line for this. We can tell this by looking at the 0 to 4. That's where babies are. And if we look at all the bars above it, over the full sort of 50 to 60 years, up to about that point, you can see that today the number of babies born is fewer than it was back then. Remember as well that every time we go up a bar, sadly, some people will die. So the fact that those bars up in the 60s and 55, 60s might be some of them a little bit shorter, that still means that there were probably more babies born back then for them to be quite so close to the birth rate there. So birth rate has reduced over a long period of time. However, there has been a slight increase over the last 10 years. If you look at 0 to 4 and 5 to 9, they are slightly longer. It seems like maybe more babies are being born in China over the last 10 years. Life expectancy, the length of time people are living for, is getting longer. How can we tell that? Well, look at those bars around 50 to 40, sort of 40 to 50 years old. Look how much longer they are than the bars above them. Now, the life expectancy in China today is 76 years old. So if you're born in China today, you can expect to live to around 76 years old on average. Now that very much changes in where you live in China. If you are wealthy and you live in one of the major cities, you're probably going to be living well into your 80s. If you're very poor living in a remote rural area, it's going to be probably in the 60s. But on average, it's 76 now. In 1960, it was just 44. So 1960, we're looking at the 60-year-olds here. If you see how many there are there, they were expected to live to 44. So you can imagine how much longer that line was back in 1960 when they were born. If the average person has already died 20 years ago, it's pretty insane. So there we go. Life expectancy is definitely getting longer. More and more people surviving. Most people are aged 20 to 65. They are what we call working age. They are economically active. They are active in the economy, earning money. The young dependents, of which you are a young dependent, basically children, people who depend on others to get by, relatively small. And if we look at the elderly dependents, let's say everyone from 65 upwards, again, not so many people up there. The bar's rapidly reducing in size. So most people are adults of working age. Okay, so with that in mind, here's a true or false quiz. So have a look through this population pyramid here, a new one, and I've got 5 questions for you. All you need to do is jot down true or false. Don't need anything more than that. It's certainly worth thinking about how you know that. So if you think the birth rate is high, well, okay, how did you work that out? But you need to think about that to answer the question. So work through each of these. Remember, we've gone through birth rate. Infant mortality rate is how many babies die whilst babies. Very sad statistic there. Life expectancy we've just talked about as well. So there we go. You should understand what all those points mean. True or false? Should just take you a minute or two. Pause the video now. Okay, answers. So the birth rate is high. Yes, it is. You can tell that because the bars at the bottom, the 0 to 4 bar, is the longest one there. So lots and lots of babies being born. The infant mortality rate is high. Yes, it is. That bar very quickly drops. So even from 0 to 4 to 5 to 9, there is a huge big drop. So sadly, in this country here, people are dying young. C, life expectancy is high. No, it is not. Back to that last point, the fact that each bar drops so quickly. You can see that by, well, if we go back to the last point there, in fact, let's do that together. About half of babies born do not survive to 30 to 34 years old. That's true. Half the population has gone by that age. This is a terrible situation for this country to be in. So yeah, no, life expectancy is incredibly short. And most people are middle-aged. No, again, they're not. They're young. If you look at the size of that, most people in this country are children. Most people are children. Pretty staggering country to live in, where most people are, 20 and under, even lower than that, probably 19 and under. Okay, so if all of that doesn't make sense, I'd advise you to go back through it again. There's a link to a YouTube video there. It goes through in quite some detail about population pyramids. And at the bottom, if all else fails, obviously, email your teacher. If you've got a specific question that could help you to understand them better. This is a tough one to get across via the internet. So I appreciate there might be some questions. Please do email us. We are all sitting here with our emails open all day, ready to go, ready to reply to them. If you don't get a reply straight away, remember, do hold on. We may be doing something else. We've all got families. We've all got our own things doing as well, going on at home. So give us a bit of time. If you need an urgent reply and your teacher has not replied to you, try another one. Try one of the other geography teachers. We're always going to be happy to help anyone. Okay, so we're going to begin looking at multiple population pyramids now to make some comparisons. We've used terminology like high income and low income country before, so we know that there is, as we've called it, a development gap. There are more and less developed countries, there are richer and poorer countries, and many other variants on that. So here we go, we've got the United Kingdom and Tanzania in 2018. We are comparing them, and hopefully you can see it's fairly obvious that there's a massive difference between these two countries. Do note that the scales along the bottom are not the same. On the left in Tanzania, you've got 0 to 5 million, and in the same width, you've got 0 to 3 on the right. So we've got to be a little bit careful here, a little bit careful with our judgments. However, I've done something on the next slide that's going to help you out with that. And you can always come back to this to pause if you need to make some more direct comparisons. So here I have superimposed them together. Now, in order to make it work as best I can, the UK population pyramid is the one that is just black. And it is transparently pasted over the top of the Tanzania population pyramid. So hopefully you can kind of see the difference between them. Hopefully you can still see the Tanzania bars underneath, and you can make some fairly obvious comparisons. Note, 25 to 29-year-olds, relatively similar between the two, although interestingly the bigger difference in males than there are in females. But other than that, pretty much every bar is completely different. Why have I chosen these two countries, by the way? Well, because they've got fairly similar total populations. Not exactly the same, but fairly similar, which means that when we are saying that one country has more babies born and the birth rate will be different, we can be accurate with those kind of statements. If one country had a massive population and one had a really tiny population, actually it might be a little bit harder to make those judgments. But anyway, here we go. So hopefully you can clearly see some massive differences. We're looking at the young dependents, the young people, much more being born all the way up till the 20s in Tanzania. However, notice that infant mortality rate and that life expectancy very different to the UK. In the UK, those bars, as you travel up through the years, they don't rapidly get shorter. They don't rapidly disappear. If you look at the top end as well, you'll see the elderly and the working people. Massive differences, significantly more in the UK than there are in Tanzania. The bars start to decrease in Tanzania from 0 to 4, whereas in the UK they really start to decrease more around the 70 to 80 point. Clearly massive differences between these two countries, and we can use this to make some inferences to work some things out about their development. Okay, so with that in mind, I've got some tasks for you. You've got the two pyramids there. Don't forget you can rewind back to that last pyramid, the comparison, if you want to see them together. First thing to do, compare the shape of the two population pyramids. And I'd like you to do that with the 4 points at the bottom there. You're going to make a point about how the birth rate is different. Don't forget, compare means how are they different? Life expectancy, again, how are they different? Where are the most people? How old are they? What's different about that? And what's the largest age group? The most people, I'm looking at those bigger categories. Is it the young dependents? Is it the working people? Is it the old or the elderly or the retired? And the largest age group, I'm after a specific number there. Is it 5 to 9? Is it 50 to 54? Is it 85 to 89? So you've got 4 sentences to write there, 4 comparisons. Tell me what's different about them. Don't just tell me about them separately. Which is higher, which is lower. That's how you make a good comparison. So 5 minutes to do that. Pause the video now. Okay, task 1 answers. So here we go. The birth rate is higher in Tanzania than in the UK. The infant mortality rate is higher. The life expectancy is shorter. And the largest age group is 0 to 4 in Tanzania and 50 to 54 in the UK. Difference of 50 years. It's pretty staggering. So there we go. There's our comparisons. And hopefully this is showing you that you can interpret these population pyramids, but also you can link it to some of these key terms, these measures of development that we learned about in our last lesson. Task 2. Suggest 2 reasons why Tanzania has a high proportion of young people. So the command word suggest means you don't have to know and be an expert in Tanzania, although by all means you have the advantage here at home of being able to maybe go and do some research. You can absolutely go and look up what's going on in Tanzania if you want to be thorough. But I'm after a slightly more simple answer here. Give me 2 reasons from the pyramid why Tanzania has a high proportion of young people. Make 2 points. Pause the video now. Okay, so Tanzania has a high proportion of young people because of a very high birth rate and a low life expectancy. So lots of babies are born, however, they don't make it into adulthood, or a lot of them don't make it into adulthood. Bit of background on Tanzania. Tanzania is a country with, as we've established, their biggest challenge is this massive birth rate. The fact that there's still so many children born, which has meant that the amount of poverty there, the poverty rate has stayed fairly high. The poverty there is a challenge, and it's a challenge because there's so many people who are living in poverty. Okay, task 3. Last one, looking at these 2 pyramids together. Tanzania's life expectancy is 65. Now that might surprise you looking at the pyramid, because look at that 65 to 69 bar. Look how different it is to the 0 to 4. Something might not make sense. So have a think about it. How can this be possible when you look at the population pyramid? And then B, what does this tell you about Tanzania's development? Don't forget, development is about change. It's about whether they're improving as a country. And then C, what challenge will this create for the government of Tanzania? Answer those questions in full sentences, please. Pause the video now. Okay, so life expectancy for A is for the people born in that year. So when I say the life expectancy in Tanzania is 65, I mean if you were born in actually 2019, you can expect to, on average, live to your 65th birthday. So most of those 0 to 4-year-olds will live to be 65, or a lot of them will anyway. However, rewind 60 years and the life expectancy was in the 40s, which is why when we look at the 60 to 64 bars now, they're so short, because those people, actually, their life expectancy was in the 40s. B, what does this tell us about the development there? Well, it's developing fairly quickly. If we've got 60 years ago a life expectancy of 40 and today a life expectancy of 65, things are moving in the right direction. C, what challenge will this create? Well, the population will rise quickly, because if we have a high birth rate and people are living longer, this population is going to get bigger and bigger. We're going to start to see, just like in the UK, those bars sort of filling out. We're not going to see that pyramid shape anymore. Those 0 to 4-year-olds, maybe in 5 years' time, the bar will be almost exactly the same width. And that is great, because that means there's lots of people surviving. And obviously, we want that. We want people to be happy and healthy. But at the same time, for the government, they then look at that and go, ooh, we've got a challenge on our hands, which is, how are we going to cope? How are we going to cope? How are we going to provide food and water? How are we going to have enough jobs to go around for all of these people? And this is something that countries like Tanzania, challenge that they're facing. Now, history, thankfully, shows that generally when a country's birth rate falls, when a country's life expectancy gets longer, when its death rate falls, its birth rate tends to drop fairly quickly just after. So hopefully people in Tanzania will start having fewer children, and those children will survive and live longer, and that should lead to more of a situation like the United Kingdom, although it's a long way to go. Tanzania is a low-income country. United Kingdom is a high-income country. There's a lot of time to go. There are decades and decades of work and hard work that need to be done in Tanzania to get it anywhere near to the levels of the United Kingdom, if realistically they can ever get there. That's a big challenge in itself. So there we go. So to finish, a little interesting task for you to do, take advantage of some home learning. I'd like you to summarize this lesson in 5 questions. 5 questions that you identify as hitting the key learning from this lesson. Has to be something about population pyramids in there, obviously. You probably get some of those key terms in there. Maybe they could be part of the question or the answer. Words like population structure, life expectancy, birth rate, infant mortality rate. Those are, we've come across those words over and over again. You can even be specific about the UK and Tanzania, absolutely. Then I'd like you to ask someone at home to answer them. Correct them if they're wrong. You can teach someone at home a little bit about geography, a little bit about the world around them, if they don't know the answers. Ask as many people as you can. If you, for whatever reason, can't get hold of someone to ask them, if they're too busy or whatever, ping one of your classmates an email, ping a friend an email, ping them a message, ping me an email. You can ask me the questions if you like. Absolutely fine. You can test me and we'll see if I get them right. Anyway, there we go. That's the end of your geography lesson for today. Next lesson, we will be trying to link population pyramids to development a little bit more, and actually back to the demographic transition model. Take care, stay safe, and I will speak to you soon.